Hey there, Tyler from Less Annoying Business here. Normally, the videos I make are very practical and hands on. It's like, how do you do a specific thing? But sometimes I think it's helpful just to understand what's actually going on with technology. So, if you're even a little bit nerdy and want to understand a little bit better how the internet works, this video is for you. If you're not curious about technology at all, I would skip it because we're going to get a little technical here. What we're going to talk about is one of the key building blocks behind the internet, which is basically how domain names work. By a domain name, I mean www.yourcompany.com. If you type that into a web browser and you see the web page, what's actually happening? What's going on to make that happen? And the key building block here that most people don't know about is called DNS, Domain Name System. This is important because if you ever host your own website as a business, you're probably going to need to modify DNS at some point, and you're not going to know what that means. So this video will help you out. Okay, so we're going to talk about DNS. Let's start with just what a user expects when they use the internet. They go into a web browser, and then they type in what's called a domain name. That's again, so my website is www.lessannoyingbusiness.com. They type that into the web browser, and then magically a website appears, right? That's kind of what the user experiences. So I want to dive into a little bit like what's going on behind the scenes here. So what you might have in your head as a model for what's going on is you type in the domain name into the address bar, lessannoyingbusiness.com. Your computer makes a request to a server. That's our server hosting the website. And then the server responds back with the website so that your computer can display it. This isn't a terrible mental model for how it works. It's just a little oversimplified. One thing I want to point out before we move on, when I say it connects to a server, what do I even mean? Servers are just computers. So whether you use a laptop or a phone or whatever, a server is not fundamentally different from that. It's just a computer that instead of someone accessing it directly, they access it over a network. So a server is just a computer, but it's not, whereas your laptop is sitting on your desk, this server is somewhere else, anywhere else in the world. So your computer makes a request over the internet to this other computer that is somewhere else, and that computer responds back saying, here's the website you were trying to see. Okay, so this is like an okay model of how this works, but there's one problem. Okay, let's say I'm in St. Louis, which is where I live, and let's say the server is in Portland. How does my computer know how to interact with it? Lessannoyingbusiness.com is not really a location for a server. Servers are identified by IP addresses. You've probably seen or heard about IP addresses. If nothing else, you're probably like watching NCIS and they were like hacking someone's IP address or whatever. What is an IP address? Well, it's basically like kind of like the geolocation coordinates for a server. So if one computer wants to talk to another computer, the IP address it's literally in the name. It's the address for where that other computer is so that they know how to talk to each other. My computer has an IP address. The server has an IP address. And in order for my computer to make a request to the server, I have to know what the IP address is. Okay? So going back to this example here, all we typed in was lessannoyingbusiness.com, but my computer can't connect to that. It has to connect to an IP address. So there's something missing from this equation. That's where DNS comes in. Okay? So this is a better model of how to think of how the internet works. You type in lessannoyingbusiness.com into the address bar of your web browser. Without you realizing, this happens so fast you don't even realize it's happening. Without you realizing it, your computer, it does not connect directly to our server. First, it connects to a DNS server. The DNS server, every computer, when you plug it into the internet, it knows one IP address, and that is the IP address of the DNS server. Okay, so your computer already knows this one IP address. So you make a request to the DNS server, and you say, hey, I'm trying to go to lessannoyingbusiness.com. I don't know where it is. The DNS server responds back and gives you the IP address, and then your computer makes another request to that IP address and says, hey, you're the website I'm looking for. Can you give me the information about the website? And then our server replies back with the website itself. So all you did as a user was type in this domain name, and behind the scenes, 1, 2, 3, 4 things happened in an instant, so you didn't even really notice. Okay, so that's what DNS is. Why am I explaining this? It's basically because if you need to host a website for your business, or if you need email, for example, if I want tyler@lessannoyingbusiness.com to be an email address, I need to set up DNS so that when people go to my go to their DNS server and say, hey, where is lessannoyingbusiness.com, it needs to send back the correct IP address for my server. So if you're setting up email hosting or you're setting up website hosting, you're probably going to need to make changes to DNS. Now, I have other videos showing specifically how to do that. Like, how are you going to actually enter these DNS settings? So I'm not going to get into the specifics here, but just high level, I hope this concept makes sense. And now you know a little bit more about how the internet works. All right, let me know if you have any questions.